In early 1995, public execution became policy. This was not justice, it was a statement, sent in steel and blood. The scene, Sheikhabad in Wardak province. A dusty square encircled by a crowd. An army officer from the old regime stands accused of murder. The verdict is death. But the weapon is not a soldier's rifle, it is a sword. The state steps back. The blade is placed in the hands of the victim's relative. This was the new model, first tested in strongholds like Kandahar, a city of over 200,000 people, a captive audience for a new kind of theater. The legal authority came from a 4-member Islamic court. Its judge, Maulawi Syed Mohammed. The goal was participation through fear, neighbors forced to watch, the community made complicit by its presence. The relative stepped forward. He took the sword. He brought the blade down. This was not random violence. This was a new system of justice. It was born in 1994 in Kandahar, the Taliban's spiritual birthplace. They immediately established their own Islamic courts. But how did this justice work, without laws or lawyers? Decisions were made on the spot, by religious judges, by field commanders. A man's life was decided in a matter of hours. The battle for the city had raged for months, but a death sentence from these courts took only a few hours. There were no defense attorneys, no formal procedures, just a swift, absolute interpretation of religious law, designed to demonstrate control. The old legal system was gone. A judge's word was final. The verdict could not be challenged. There were no mechanisms for appeal. The absence of appeal was not just a legal void, it was an invitation. In August of 1996, residents of Kandahar witnessed the next stage of public justice. The place was the courtyard of the Eid-Gah Mosque, a historic site for community prayer and celebration. Now, a stage for public killing. The day was hot. 2 people were brought before the crowd, 40-year-old Nurbibi and her 38-year-old stepson Turialai. The accusation was adultery. Men and children gathered to watch. Women were forced to participate in silence. A pit was dug in the ground. Nurbibi was placed inside it. The crowd began throwing stones, a slow, rhythmic barrage. After some time, Turialai was dead, but Nurbibi was still alive. A Taliban fighter stepped forward, lifting a single large boulder. He dropped it on her head. The entire ordeal lasted for 30 minutes. The killing in Kandahar was not a singular horror. It was a template, a documented, systematic campaign of terror. The legal mechanism was called Qisas, retribution. If a court declared a man guilty of murder, the victim's family was handed the sword. Amnesty International found no safeguards, no fair trials, just swift, state-sanctioned revenge. This system was not confined to one city. It was exported to places like Lashkargah, capital of Helmand province. But why leave the bodies in the public squares, for hours, exposed? The goal was to replace the ordinary fear of criminals with a primal fear of the new authority. It was not justice, it was social engineering. Crowds of local residents gathered, compelled to watch the authorities broadcast their power. In September 1996, the system of terror reached the capital. 2 bodies hung from a traffic light post near the presidential palace in Kabul. One was the former president Mohammad Najibullah. The other, his brother, General Shapur Ahmadzai. The message was not subtle. It was a signal for the entire city. The old world was over. They had been taken from inside the United Nations mission. Najibullah had been hiding there since 1992. He had sanctuary, international immunity, 4 years of asylum, erased in a single night. Fighters stormed the compound, violating its diplomatic status. The blue flag of the UN offered no defense. For the people of Kabul, the lesson was clear. International law was gone. Protection did not exist. The new regime offered amnesty to ordinary civilians. But for the leaders of the old government, there was no pardon. The punishment of leaders was a prologue. Now, terror needed a stage for the masses. They found it in Kabul. Ghazi Stadium, a place once for sport, for football, for crowds cheering a goal. That memory was erased, systematically replaced. The stadium became a factory for public death. Why a stadium? The logic was cold, utilitarian. It offered vast capacity, a controlled perimeter. It turned punishment into a mass event. Religious judges, the ulama, delivered verdicts over loudspeakers. Their words echoed across the stands. The accused stood on the grass where athletes once ran. The sentence was immediate. In the first year, the regime forced thousands of Afghans to watch. The spectacle of the stadium was for control. Mazar-i-Sharif was for annihilation. In August 1998, localized terror became an industry of death. How does the cleansing of an entire city look? On August 8th, the Taliban provided an answer. Their forces poured into the streets of Mazar-i-Sharif, a city historically shared by many peoples. But the Taliban saw only one enemy, the Hazaras, a Shia minority. The hunt began. From house to house, the sound of rifle bolts clicking in narrow alleys. Doors splintered from their frames. Men and boys were pulled into the daylight, executed on the streets where they lived. This was not battle, it was a purge. 2,000 civilians were murdered. This targeted violence fractured the city's social fabric forever. A place once defined by its diversity was now mapped by ethnic hatred. The message was absolute. The first days of the cleansing claimed at least 2,000 lives. For the survivors of the massacre, a new ordeal began. They were packed into sealed metal containers, no water, no ventilation. Men suffocated in the suffocating heat. The trucks became sun-baked mobile tombs. This was not chaos, it was policy, broadcast from the city's mosques. The new governor, Mullah Manan Niazi, preached retribution. He blamed an entire community for past resistance. He promised absolute compliance or absolute violence. This logic of dehumanization spread. In May 2000, it surfaced again near the Robatak Pass in Baghlan province. Taliban forces executed a group of civilian detainees. Most were Ismaili Hazaras. They had been held captive for months. 31 bodies were recovered from the site. Their remains were found months after their initial detention. While mass graves marked the northern provinces, U.S. government reports from 1998 and 1999 documented a different kind of horror: the daily routine of justice in rural courts. The crime was often simple theft. The trial was short. The sentence was public amputation of a hand or a foot. But who became the victim if the condemned man had money? A random spectator from the crowd. The process was brutally simple. A wealthy thief, convicted and sentenced, would pay a bribe. He would slip back into the watching audience. Then, soldiers would grab another man. Someone arrested for a minor charge or no charge at all. The real thief walked away with his money. The bystander was dragged to the center of the square. He lost a limb for a crime he didn't commit. Blood stained the dusty ground. There were no medics, no antibiotics. In a land with shattered rural healthcare, a formal amputation often became a slow execution. The real sentence was death by infection. Alongside amputations, hangings became common in the countryside. The executions were public displays. The bodies were often left on the gallows until morning. But public punishment wasn't just for thieves. In cities like Kandahar and Herat, it became a tool for personal revenge, especially against women. A simple accusation was enough. A word from a neighbor, a claim from a relative. No proof was needed. The regime's harsh rules on movement made any woman a target. Just being seen with a man who wasn't a family member could trigger an accusation. Justice became a weapon, a way to settle household disputes, a tool for personal vendettas, legalized and carried out in public. Between 1996 and 1999, reports from Kabul, Herat, and Kandahar described the outcome: public stonings, public shootings. This brutal system was presented as ancient tradition, but these methods were new to the country's formal justice. Afghanistan's official penal code from 1976 did not authorize death by stoning. The regime's isolation was absolute. Its brutal rules were law. But that isolation was about to be broken from the outside. On October 7, 2001, the sky over Afghanistan opened. U.S. aircraft began bombing Taliban targets. The campaign had a name: Operation Enduring Freedom. The cause had been etched into global memory weeks before. September 11th, Al-Qaeda militants attacked the United States. The trail led directly to training camps and safe havens inside Afghanistan, under Taliban protection. The American demand was simple: hand over Osama bin Laden. The Taliban leadership refused. They offered counter-proposals: a trial in another country under Islamic law. The U.S. government rejected them all. The Taliban had made a choice. They put the protection of one foreign leader above the survival of their own government. It was the point of no return. While bombers hit military sites and Al-Qaeda camps from the air, special forces and allied Afghan fighters advanced on the ground. The offensive shattered the old order. Within weeks, the system collapsed. Kabul lay exposed. What becomes of a place of mass executions? At Ghazi Stadium, workers cut the locks from the gates. The grounds, once stained with blood, were swept clean. Cultural events replaced public punishments. The sound of life returned to the city. For the first time in years, schoolyards filled with the noise of girls playing. The regime's fall was swift, total. By mid-November of 2001, Mazar-i-Sharif was captured. Kabul fell with almost no resistance. By early December, their spiritual heartland, Kandahar, had surrendered. The system was hollow. It was held together by fear, not loyalty. When its leader, Mullah Mohammed Omar, fled into hiding, the entire structure dissolved. A new government under Hamid Karzai began to take shape. Families across the capital returned to forgotten routines. Girls packed their bags for school. But as life returned to the capital, the war was not over. It had just gone digital. How do you control a population without physical presence in its cities? The mobile phone camera became the instrument. In 2007, the first iPhone entered the market. Mass mobile video was born. Militants instantly saw a new weapon. That same year, a lens captured the execution of a man named Ghulam Nabi. The footage was grainy, low resolution. A child, no older than 10, stood over the condemned man. He slowly raised a weapon. The camera was deliberately framed. It captured not just the act, but the screaming spectators in the background. This was performance. Human Rights Watch called it a new low. From a single victim, the strategy scaled. By 2011, insurgents on the Afghanistan-Pakistan border had refined the method. It became an assembly line of terror. Footage showed 16 Pakistani policemen. They were captured, bound, forced to stand in a single line before the cameras. The recording was continuous, no cuts. The fighters raised their rifles. The footage became a blueprint. By 2011, a decade into the partisan war, the strategy had shifted. The new weapon was the mobile phone. Raw violence was no longer enough. It had to be packaged. Graphic titles and edited transitions flickered on small screens, in dark rooms. Insurgents became directors, forcing captives to kneel through staged confessions. The act was filmed, edited, and then distributed. A digital product shared from phone to phone across rural villages. The videos traveled further. They appeared on international extremist forums. A message to supporters, proof of life, proof of ruthlessness. For 10 more years, this media war defined the conflict, ending only in August 2021 when fighters entered Kabul. Throughout it all, the camera never looked away. The camera's gaze shifted, from soldiers and police to people with no weapons at all. Humanitarian work was supposed to be neutral, protected. In Afghanistan, it became a death sentence. Between 2002 and 2010, the United Nations tracked a quiet, systematic war. A war on civil society. Government employees, local officials, civil servants, shot dead on the road, ambushed in their cars. The goal was to dismantle the state from the inside out. Why was a rural teacher a priority target? His work symbolized the presence of government, and that symbol had to be destroyed. By 2010, the violence escalated. 126 major attacks targeted aid workers in a single year. Dozens were killed. International organizations began to pull out, leaving entire regions without medical care, without a lifeline. Then came August 2010, Badakhshan Province. A team of 10 medical workers was returning from an eye care mission in the mountains. 6 Americans, 2 Afghans, 1 Briton, and 1 German. The road was silent. Then, a sudden burst of rifle fire. An ambush. No survivors. Taliban spokesmen immediately claimed responsibility. The doctors were spies, they announced. Christian missionaries. But days later, local commanders denied it. This was not an operation, they said. This was murder. The message was deliberately confused. The terror was not. The line between combatant and civilian was erased. Teaching a child became collaboration. Healing the sick became a threat. In that year alone, insurgents assassinated at least 21 students, teachers, and educational staff without trial or explanation. This was not random violence. It was a strategy. Born after the loss of the cities, the battleground shifted. From packed stadiums to empty roadsides. A body found at dawn, a government worker, a local police officer, a teacher. The killers were never seen. They no longer held the cities as they had in the 1990s. Public executions were impossible. The spectacle was replaced by silence. 0 mass trials in city squares. Their place was taken by hundreds of quiet assassinations. The targets were the pillars of the Afghan state. The tactic systematically dismantled government from the bottom up, mirroring the Viet Cong strategy from the 1960s. The goal was psychological paralysis, proving the state could not protect its own people. The enemy was everywhere and nowhere. They left the bodies in the open as a message. On each victim, they pinned a note accusing them of betrayal. The strategy of quiet terror paid off. August 2021, President Ashraf Ghani fled the country. Kabul fell without a fight. The new government declared a general amnesty, a promise of peace for government workers, a promise of restraint. In Kabul, press conferences broadcast a message of moderation, a media facade for Western journalists. But was this declared amnesty worth the ink it was written on? By the end of 2021, the answer became obvious. While the capital spoke of forgiveness, the provinces whispered of fear. Reports surfaced from Ghazni and Helmand, from Kandahar and Kunduz. Former soldiers, police officers, and intelligence agents started disappearing from their homes. These vanishings happened quietly, set against the official backdrop of peace and restraint broadcast to the world. The cycle closed. Public punishment returned. The first reports confirmed it. More than 100 former security force members executed or forcibly disappeared.